actually, it was crazy. So I saw your set. This is my story of why I asked you on my podcast.
Yeah.
I saw your set at Philly's Funniest. I absolutely loved it.
Thank you.
Wanted to try to talk to you after the show, just introduce myself, you know, so I wouldn't be a stranger from the internet asking me to get in my car. And you were around a bunch of other comics. And I didn't want to like single you out because, you know, I didn't want the other comics. Well, what about me? You know, and then they give you an attitude. I appreciate that. Yeah, I know how
You're
it
not
goes.
wrong,
So anyway, so I Googled you after, you know, kind of like just to get an idea.
Yeah.
And the first thing that popped up was the Hollowcore podcast.
Yeah.
And I actually did that podcast too.
I was, as soon as you said you were from Delco, I was going to be like, do you know my voice though?
Yeah, right. And I couldn't believe it. So I listened to that whole podcast and I was like, oh, shit. One, it was an awesome podcast.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
And I'm like, oh my God, I know everything about her. Like, I don't want to, like, I hope I didn't come in with too much information. But,
right.
So
no, you know what's funny is though they did in such a hilarious way. Like, I remember, I was like, how much research did they really do on me or whatever? And I like sat down and Vinny's like mentioning old Instagram posts of mine from memory. And I was like, y'all did your fucking work. It's like, should I be scared I'm in this basement right now?
Oh, they did the same thing with me.
They're
and it was
dope.
Like, yeah.
I love
they're
those
awesome.
dudes. Yeah, we
they
talk
were
a
like,
lot.
Yeah. They like watched every YouTube video that like same thing. Like I forgot I did. I was like, holy smokes.
Yeah, they did the work, man.
They're awesome. Shout out to the Hollowcore podcast.
Amen.
But
Amen.
I feel like this is good.
Yeah, this looks all right. All right, here we go. Welcome to another episode of Cheesesteaks with the one, the only Kirsten Cills. Did I get that right?
Christine.
Kirsten Cills is part of her set. I'm really happy to have you here. I am a huge fan of stand-up comedy, and I really wanted to talk to you because over COVID, I feel like I was at home and I just consumed so much content.
Yeah.
Where like I almost like, it's not that I got turned off from comedy, but I almost like figured out everything, you know? And it's like, you know, as somebody who watched a lot of comedy, as you get older, you can kind of tell where jokes are going and this, and that, you know?
Which is dangerous, yeah.
And then over COVID, I just consumed so much content on so many different like stand-up, you know, video sketches, whatever it is. And it got to a point where I'm like almost turned off from comedy. And I'm trying to figure out why. And I think a big part of it, especially today's day and age, which I hate, is how comedians are so scared to say anything. Like, say anything real, you know? And I understand. You can, like, slapstick humor. It has its time and place or whatever. And then every now and again, I think I actually heard you mention this on a podcast where it was like, they were talking about female comedians, and it was like, oh my God, you said, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was like, oh my God, another female comedian joking about her vagina or something like that, you know?
Yeah.
And again, I'm like, all right, wow, girls making sex jokes, oh my God.
Right.
And so, and then on the flip side, sometimes those, because I've done comedy a few times, not enough to like call myself a comedian. Something that struck me doing comedy was the audience, I think, is just as responsible as the comedian for being so damn soft. And I don't know if you remember, I don't know like how much you heard, and I'm sure you run into it a lot. I'm sure it's just an afterthought, but it's Philly's Funniest when I saw you.
Yeah.
You started with, I think 9/11. There was like a couple jokes before, and then you got into talking about your oxygen and being terminally ill. And you like made a joke, and people were like kind of like, oh, is she kidding? Is she serious? And they're laughing. And then you like made a segue that like it started to set in with people that it was real. And you said something like, you obviously probably will remember the joke. It was like, you know, that's something to worry about when I'm at the end of my life. That's a problem for 2023. And I lost it. And I could tell the room, it happens to me a lot in comedy clubs. Like I could tell the room got very quiet. There might've been a couple other laughs. I was definitely the loudest laugh. And then you like kept going. And like, you know, thinking about that after, I'm like, man, this audience, like that's part of it that made me realize. And I really wanted to talk to you because like, I just wanted to like learn about your experience talking about something real. And you know, there's a lot of truth, and I mean it's like the realest thing you can talk about, but in a funny way. And in this culture where like the most insane things are treated with kid gloves, it's like you're laughing about literally the ultimate thing, you know?
Right, yeah.
And so I just wanted to hear more about your experience with that, because it saved that little bit of comedy that's still alive in me, that saved me that night, because I needed that.
Yeah, so like, well, first of all, I didn't get to like see a lot of the other comics. So did you find that the other comics did you find that any other comics said anything that was like, oh, the room got quiet or anything? Like that you were like, oh, that's a little cancelable in people's eyes.
So there's one comic that, and this is something that I learned, and I've talked with a lot of people about it. Not a lot, but I've talked with a few people about this, specifically a few Black performers, where I had this like one story that I told, where it's actually on YouTube. It's like, I think it's titled "The Craziest Night Ever," for those familiar with it. I picked up these 3 white people, 2 guys and a girl, and right off the bat, my first impression of them were they were using the N-word. Yeah. So in my story I'm telling, I'm like, all right, these guys are using a word that I'm not allowed to say, so I'm going to use the word neighbor instead. Yeah. So every time I say neighbor, whatever I say, you know? And when I tell it in front of a white audience, it's like, everyone's like, oh my God, am I going to get fired from my job just for being here? Right. And when I tell it in front of a Black audience, they lose it. Love it. It's the funniest thing ever, right? And so there was one guy who was a Black guy talking about, he made jokes about slavery.
About the white people owning pets.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I heard about it later.
I could tell there was like the same kind of feeling where like the people in the audience, because it was a predominantly white audience.
Of course it was.
And they were like, am I allowed to laugh at this? I can't not laugh at it because it's a Black guy, you know what I mean? Right. Like, I don't want to leave, you know? And so that was the only other, like, I don't want to say risque thing, but that was, because there's a difference between risque and like risque with like truth in it. Maybe risque is the wrong word, but you know what I'm saying, right? Yeah. So that was the only thing that like had shock value, but also real world consequences. I think that's what I'm saying by risque.
Yeah. So like when I did Funniest last year, one of the guys who won with me, Gary, who actually ended up winning the whole thing. Gary Sharp is fucking amazing.
I feel like I know that
And
name.
Gary is so fucking funny, and he and I won together one of those nights, and he did one of the only other jokes I did my 9/11 joke that night, and I'm sure you've heard it. For those who haven't, I'm a first-hand survivor of 9/11. I'm allowed to make this joke. I lost my house. I lost everything. And so I made this joke, and I was like, it went really well, but I was like, am I going to be the only one who was like saying shit that maybe I shouldn't have? And then Gary went up and he did this whole thing about how he's blacking as a white girlfriend. So when she asked him, he's blackening as a white girlfriend.
Blackening?
Black and he has
black
a white.
And has a white.
Yeah.
I was like, okay.
He's black.
I was like, is that a new term these kids are using? Is that a new PC term that I'm not like up with?
So he's black, his girlfriend's white, and he was saying when she asked him to do chores he doesn't want to do, he does them while he sings Negro spirituals. So
I've seen that.
Feel guilty.
Yeah, that's how I know him. Yeah.
And same thing. The room, all white people were like, I can't laugh.
You know what?
If I laugh, it's a hate crime.
Yeah. It's
like he's making the joke, dude. Yeah.
Does he host at Helium?
Yeah, he definitely does stuff at Helium. Yeah.
That was another instance where I remember specifically. I can see him on my face now. He was making that joke, and I remember exactly what I said, and I was dying, and I was the only person in the audience laughing. And he was so much so that I remember him specifically. He didn't call me out. Yeah. But I remember he like looked at me, and we had like 30 to 45 seconds where he was just telling me the jokes because I was the only one laughing.
It's like, you're the only one this is for. Yeah.
I remember that. Oh, that's so funny.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah. So I have not really, I will say, because the stuff I joke about is my life, my personal experience, I haven't had a ton of issues with people being offended because I'm the person that would be offended. You know, like it's about me. Like no one else is coming in here. Maybe there's other people coming in who happen to be terminally ill, happen to have cystic fibrosis, happen to be on oxygen in their 20s, but like that's very slim chances. So I think a lot of time when people get offended about stuff, they're offended for other people. You know, like I went to art school. So, you know, I went to a private art school for acting and for theater. And so like, that was a very, and I don't mean this in a pejorative context, but like, it was a very woke crowd, right? Yeah. Which is not at all a bad thing. I consider myself involved in that crowd, but it was all like pretty wealthy white kids getting offended for the concept of other people.
Right.
You can't say that that's offensive to Muslim people. And it's like, totally, I do agree white people should be standing up for others because we have that voice. But also it's like, is that your place? You know, to be like, that's offensive to any Muslim person that might be here. And it's like, this is the whitest fucking room you've ever seen, you know? And so I feel like when people would get offended, if someone got offended about like one of my jokes, it's like, I'm offended. That's offensive to people with cystic fibrosis. Yeah. It's like, I am people with cystic fibrosis. And same with 9/11, you know? So it's like, I haven't had too many issues with that. Like, people ask me, when you hear your comic, people always say like, do you ever get heckled, you know? And I was like, I'm pretty lucky and that I've never been heckled, because again, I don't think it looks good on the person who would heckle me, you know? I've never had somebody like call back and like respond in a poor way to one of my jokes, but yeah, it's fucking hard. I mean, it took me years to write my 9/11 joke because I was really anxious that it wasn't going to go over well. And I just had to have a lot of people who I know tell me like, dude, it's your story. You're not making fun of anyone. You're making fun of your own life and how much like PTSD you have from that and how it still affects you so much. And it's like, yeah, but something like that is so many people's story, you know? At least this CF is my direct. Other people have CF, but I talk about my life with cystic fibrosis. You know, I always joke, like when I said the joke about dying in 2023, and I always say like, thank you for laughing at that, because you know who never laughs at that? My mom. And you know, and I always make fun of her on stage every set I do, because she's a really good sport with how much I joke about stuff that is also her story, you know? She's the only one who was with me on 9/11 when we were standing next to the building and the plane crashed into it over our heads. She's the one who has a daughter with a terminal disease. So it's like, it's her story too. And she's a very good sport about it. But yeah, I haven't had any issues with it yet, like knock on something, but like, I worry. I do worry about that. I do worry about that. Like a good amount. Every time I go on stage, I'm like, what if this is the time that I'm officially fucking canceled, or I officially bomb?
Yeah.
You know?
So you've never bombed?
Okay, so last year, this is the only time, and I want them back. Like it didn't end poorly, but it started really poorly. Last year, I got booked to do, you know, people see your set and then they book you to do that set. They go, you know, the thing I saw you do at Helium, can you do that? So I got booked to do a 30-minute at a show in Ambler, and I was stoked, and they basically just said, you know, we don't have the date yet, whatever, but it's going to be the weekend after Labor Day. And I'm like, sure, it's Saturday after Labor Day. I agree. I write my whole set. I'm not a calendar person. I'm not looking at the date. They booked me for the 20th anniversary of 9/11.
Oh my gosh.
And now I have to, it's already hard to convince people that I'm not fucking lying when I tell this.
Right.
Let alone, like, because in their minds, it's like, what are the odds we're at this show in Ambler and the headliner happens to be a firsthand survivor of 9/11 who, like, you know, when I like moved here after, when we moved here after 9/11, we were interviewed by all these like newspapers and all this stuff. We were constantly being interviewed because we were the people in the area who had personally experienced it and like lost everything and saw all of this firsthand.
So you moved right after 9/11? Yeah.
So we lost our house, right? So we lived in a hotel for like 10 weeks or something. We lived in a hotel for a while. Yeah. And then we moved back here. So it's like where my family lives. And so it's already hard to convince people when I go on stage. Like, I know I am making a joke, because, you know, a lot of times comics make things up for jokes. Totally. You have to.
Oh, yeah.
No, life isn't usually that funny without you being a little, like, hyperbolic. But I already have trouble with that. And the fact that it was the 20th anniversary of September 11th, and these people came to a comedy show probably expecting people to make jokes about being like, God, I hope no one makes a joke about 9/11.
Yeah.
And the way I always start my set is, I don't say that I'm going to talk about 9/11. I just say, like, you know, I used to live in New York. New York's fucking crazy place. You know, we've all seen movies. You know, New York's wild. And I always say the craziest thing that ever happened to me when I lived in New York is, like, one morning, my mom and my brother and I were walking to school, and we were standing next to this building waiting to cross the street, and a plane flew over our head and crashed into it. So like, I don't say 9/11 for a little bit. We all know what I'm referring to. And I always say, like, you probably heard about it on the news, maybe. I don't know if it was local news, maybe. I don't know if they covered it big time. But, and everybody, the second people started realizing what I was about to say, I got, oh my God, they turned on me so quick. And it took me a while to get them. I was like, I also want to say, like, I do this set all year round. Like, this is not because...
You said that to him?
I did, yeah. I had to stop and say, like, I just want to say I do this set in April 2018. I do it in February 2017. I do it all the time. It just happens to be that this is a really bad timing. And when I said that, people were like, oh, okay. Yeah. And I even said, like, I didn't know the date I was signing up, you know, so I was like, I am as surprised as you that I am telling these jokes on the 20th anniversary. Yeah. So that was the only time I really, I wouldn't say, like, it went so poorly, but, like, it took a while to get them. It was, like, the longest I've been on stage where there's just silence, you know? Like, if you're a comic, you should be hearing laughs every 30 seconds, you know, less than that usually. Yeah. It was like probably
Did you cut the joke short at all on the 9/11 part?
I did a little bit. Yeah, I got nervous because I have, you know, I just ended with I do a joke about just like how other people talk about 9/11. You know, like when people hear my story, they have to then tell me where they were on 9/11. And it's always like, I was in Michigan. Yeah, yeah. In my first like grade classroom. Yeah, right. I'm like, you're so brave. Yeah.
You're a survivor too.
Oh my God. Wow. We're all survivors. Never forget. Yeah. Yeah. So that was the only time I would say, but honestly, like, I've never done my disease set in front of a crowd of people who are also terminal. You know, like maybe every once in a while there's like someone in the audience who's like a cancer patient or something, but they're the ones who love that shit. You know, they laugh immediately. Right. And people on TikTok is where I've definitely gotten my biggest crowd of the most amount of people seeing my stand-up. I post little stuff on there, and it's a lot of people being like, I just got diagnosed with something like 2 weeks ago, and this is the first time I've laughed since, so like, thank you. And it's like, amazing. Yeah, that makes me feel good. Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah,
that's cool. Honestly, when I like your set, like I looked at your socials a little bit, and I know you have the sitcom coming up, right? It's not out yet.
Yeah, it's being shopped right now.
But man, if you want to grow a following TikTok, I could give you like an easy blueprint. You could have 100,000 followers on TikTok, like no problem.
Dude, I'd probably take you up on that. Yeah. I only started doing TikTok just to get my stand-up out there a little more. Yeah. It's hard because a lot of my stand-up is in the sitcom that I work for, right? And that is, I just signed contracts about, you know, you can't talk about the script or whatever, and that is technically in the script. So a lot of my stuff, I can do it for an audience, but I can't like record it and post it on TikTok, you know, because if it's a joke in the show and it's being sold, you know, let's say, I don't know, HBO Max picks it up. That's their property now. Like that's their jokes to sell, even though I'm the writer, so that's part of it, but like I can't just be posting those on the internet. It's hard because I want to post jokes, but it's really like, unless someone sees me live like you did, I don't really get a lot of people who like have seen my stuff, you know.
But I think the cool thing about TikTok, this is like my wheelhouse, because I've just been doing it for so long.
You're huge on TikTok and YouTube, right?
Well, my grandmother has I have 2 accounts on TikTok. My grandmother has the one with 1 million followers.
Jesus Christ.
But I run that account, so you know, I'm just saying, I already made a woman with breathers famous once.
Yeah,
so
true.
I got the blueprint for you.
Yeah. Oh wait, my mom's on oxygen too.
She would call them breathers. Yeah.
Breathers. I love that.
But she would never she would always take it. She hated it. But but anyway.
So I was gonna say, did you start on YouTube?
Yeah, started on YouTube. Right. I'm a millennial. I'm 34. I'm like, I always feel like I'm like a little behind the times. Like, guys, I know I got the skill set to do it, but I'm always like, man, I came into YouTube just a couple years too late. TikTok, I actually timed right. I was like ahead of that.
That's lucky.
I got into TikTok when I was like still embarrassed to tell people I was on TikTok.
Yeah.
Like, even like my little cousins who like were like, they actually came up to me at my other grandparents' funeral. It was like, you have a video on TikTok with however many views. I was like, now's not the place, guys.
Yeah.
But like before that, I was embarrassed to tell him. I was like, shit, I can't have my middle school cousin know that I'm on TikTok, you know? So like I was in TikTok before that. Yeah, I just like at the end of the day, all these different platforms, just they're all the same. They just have a different
following
method to it. But like,
which do you prefer?
It's all different. TikTok is the best to like for outreach. So like for you, for your to like get your sitcom out there and just like to become the way like a lot of things. It's kind of like what we were talking about earlier. Like it's not always the best art that rises to the top for whatever reason, whether people have marketing dollars to put behind it, whether they're well known or whatever. So like if somebody knows you from TikTok. And they're like, oh my gosh, she is a sitcom. I'm definitely watching that, you know? And even though there's a lot of stuff on the sitcom, like I guarantee you the thing about TikTok is like the audience is willing to have these like slice of life, like not cringe, but like not polished stories. Like you don't need a stand-up set to do it.
Yeah.
And like that story you told, I heard on the Hollowcore podcast about the guy on at the restaurant. Like that, I heard that story, and that's when I was like, "Oh my god, that story needs to be on TikTok, and that will get her."
With the backpack, you mean?
Yeah, and the douchebag who's like, "Yeah,
did you just get here?" Yeah,
that was like, you know. And for those who haven't listened to the Hollowcore podcast, it was like, sounds like I'm plugging a different podcast on my podcast. I'm new to this, but you show up. I'm stealing your story, but basically you show up to work, and this guy's sitting there. He's a real asshole to a service worker, which is an Uber driver. Trust me, I know. And he says something about your backpack, and then the moment he realized that it's oxygen, he was just mortified.
Yeah, he thought I was like either trying to leave my shift early or like just showed up, like being unprofessional. And he was like, "You just got here, or are you on your way out?" I just got to watch his eyes like slowly follow up my tube.
And like a story like you telling that story on TikTok, guarantee it. Yeah. And it's just like I don't know.
So I should. Story times, right?
Yeah, you're gonna like. I hope you take me up on that because it. Will,
I really will. That's a good idea.
Like forget HBO. Like you have the internet. You have TikTok and the internet. That's all you need.
It's funny because I don't
pay good money though. So.
Yeah, it's funny because like I don't. You know, when it's like your own life, you don't. It takes you some time to realize what's actually interesting and what's just like your day to day. You know, like I obviously encounter a lot of crazies, a lot of people who have like thoughts on this, you know, whatever. And it's been my whole life. So it's like sometimes I get so used to it that I'm like, I'm bored of how interesting can it be to like hear a girl in her 20s talk about being terminally ill. And it's like, because I'm so used to it. All my friends are so used to it. But to people who don't know me, it's like, I need to know why she's wearing that. Like, they can't focus on anything until I tell them why I'm wearing. You know what I mean? They're, like, not listening at all to what I'm saying. And it's like, oh, yeah, like, other people see it and they're taken aback. Whereas, like, you know, my friends and family are so used to, you know. Yeah. They'll just be like, can you get your terminal ass down here? We're going to be late. You know, like, that's how my friends talk to me. And other people are like, oh, my God.
Yeah.
Are you okay? You're so brave. Yeah. Yeah. So for TikTok, I feel like it's hard to decide like what's actually funny and what's like.
Yeah. Well, you know, it just goes back to like sharing the stuff you like. That's where I always start with it.
Yeah,
but then you'll see in the comments like what people like and what people identify with. And like at the end of the day, like not every video, you know, in my perfect world, every video I make has 10 billion views, you know. But like as long as I enjoy doing it and as long as it's like something that I, you know, a memory that I like or something like that, or and honestly, a lot of it, like we were talking about, is if I feel like I'm sharing some sort of truth or an important truth or something. Yeah. If I can look back on this, be like, yeah, I'm glad I said that, you know, even if nobody listened, you know, because
as opposed to the inverse of like, I don't like that I said that, but a ton of people, I made money off of it. Right. And like that's so. Sure, in the moment satisfying, but very not like fulfilling as a creator.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. And like, and that's something. As long as you can like enjoy, and that was a big thing to start with my grandmother. I'm like, look, no matter what happens, like these are funny memories I have with my grandmother. You know. Yeah. So like, that's how like I could kind of justify like even if a video didn't do well, and like that kind of made it fun for me. You know.
Yeah, and I think a lot like that too because like you know, like I said, I went to college for acting, specifically theater. I love doing live stuff, but I love doing, because like you said about the stuff with you and, you call her Mom, right? With you and Mom is like, it's immortalized on tape forever. You know, like it's when you have these awesome moments and you're like, oh, I have that forever now, you know, as opposed to like because you can have some amazing memories mentally that you've like stored away, but it's cool to have something like how old's your grandmother?
She, well, she's passed, but she was 80. She was born in 31, 1988. She died, maybe 89. I forget.
Yeah. So how she was born in? Oh, okay.
31.
Yeah.
I always do the math. I never remember. I just did the math.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So it's like that's so cool to have all those memories, you know, and I love what you do too because I am so close with my mom. Like she is my best fucking friend.
That's awesome.
We're closer. Like my cousins know. Like it's like Kirsten and mom, you know, and I just love what you're doing because I was like, damn, like you don't really get to hear from people of that generation on the internet because they're not on the internet. And so someone else being like, Mom, I'm talking about this. You know, that's cool.
So you said your family's originally from PA, right?
Yeah.
Okay, because I did the quick like math there. I'm like, all right, she grew up in New York originally, but she's calling her mom. So she's from PA. I was like, that's what she said. Right,
so my whole family's from here. I was born in like Holy Redeemer Hospital in Huntington Valley, and then my mom got married to my stepdad. He's not my stepdad anymore, but at the time it was my stepdad. He lived in New York.
Okay.
And he was this like very fancy. Like we lived in like my mom was a single mom with 2 kids. One of them was really, really sick, right? So and like we lived in like a duplex and like in Langhorne, like not a good place. And she didn't have her undergrad. She was cleaning houses for a living. Like it was like, and then we met my stepdad who was like so wonderful and amazing. And when we moved in with him, he moved us to his penthouse apartment in a building he owned.
Oh wow!
In the financial district, right next to the World Trade Center. So it was like, oh my fucking God, this is a whole new world, you know. And so we probably lived there for like, I think I only lived in New York for like maybe 2.5 years or something.
Gotcha.
I think I was like 4 or something when we moved, and then I was 7 by the time we left. So I don't remember much of living in New York, but also my experience in New York was not what you think of when you think of New York, because it was this very like fancy, like Eloise at the Plaza kind of life, like
right.
like Home Alone 2 New York, as opposed to like most people who live in New York are used to like, you know, you got to be a little tougher. And I was like, that was not my experience in New York. Yeah. And then I moved to Philly. I'm very humbled when I lived here. It's like, oh yeah, you do got to be fucking tough. Yeah.
Well, I can tell you already adjusted to Philly because you didn't miss a beat when there was, you know, he probably lives in this park. The guy standing in front of our car. You didn't miss our beat. I was keeping an eye on him. He was giving himself a little shower and changing right in front of us. And I'm like, all right, she's definitely Philly. She's not even phased.
Yeah, I've lived here since, like, in the city since I started college. So 2014 I started, and then I just haven't left since.
Okay.
But I was living in, you know, on UArt's campus, which is like the neighborhood, Broad and Walnut, right? So it was still like
Broad and Walnut for
So it's still like a pretty nice area. So I was living on 13th and Pine. I lived above Dirty Frank's. 13th and Spruce. Very much not the way I could ever live today, you know. But you're in your dorm. You're like living on student loans.
I was just talking about that with someone. We went on a trip and there was 5 guys in a hotel room. I slept under the pull-out couch.
No.
And it's just like the things we used to do, you know. And I think about that with living situations too. It's like,
You're like, oh yeah, I'll just share a bed. For a full year, right?
Yeah, right.
And I would totally be down for that because it meant nothing. And now I'm like, I need more alone time than I ever knew I would need. Like, if I could be alone for the rest of my life, I'd be so happy, you know? Like, I see people because other people want to hang out, and it's like, I want to make them happy, but I'm like, God, if I could never see someone again, I'd be okay. And then I think about, like, sharing rooms with people in college, and it was just like, you know, you come home and chat all day. I'm like, you couldn't fucking pay me. I need to do that now. Yeah, but I was living in, like, the bougier area, you know? And I remember all my suburban friends being like, oh my God, you live in Philly. Like, do you feel safe? I was like, I'm the poorest person in my building. They're probably scared of me. Like, I'm the trash. I'm the one like living on student loans. They're all fucking doctors and shit. And then I moved to 20th and Mifflin. So I was like really getting a much Philly. More normal South Philly experience. Like they call it Newbold.
Oh, you know, I've always seen that on Google Maps. I never heard anyone actually say that.
They give them all these bullshit names now. You know, it's like Newbold, and I mean, Graduate Hospital's been around for a while. That's kind of where I live now.
You know the real name of your neighborhood?
Grace Ferry.
Yeah, but the cool name.
What is it?
Devil's Pocket.
Oh, fuck yeah, I did know Devil's Pocket.
And you know where that name comes from?
No.
So in like the 20s or 30s, a local legend has it.
Yeah,
a local priest said that the neighborhood's youth was so bad that they would steal money from the Devil's Pocket. So it was like, it was like a real like ratchet, like Irish, I believe, Irish Catholic. I don't think there's any other kind of Irish in America that's Catholic.
Especially not in Philly.
Yeah, not in Philly. Yeah.
Oh my God.
And again, talking about the PC stuff, I'm half Irish, come from an Irish Catholic Southwest Philly, so I can say this.
Yeah, you can say it. I'm not Irish, so I'm canceled.
But I always think that's the coolest neighborhood name, Devil's Pocket.
Yo, it's fucking crazy that I have never even thought to use that before. Because I remember when I lived on 20th, and on Mifflin, and I would see that on the map, and then I just moved here, and I've never even, because oh God, that sounds so like, I love that.
And that's the crazy thing about Philly, like on Google Maps, like it says Devil's Pocket, you know, like it's not like it's not like a street, like a neighborhood slang. It's like, no, that's what the neighborhood's actually called.
It's like when you go to other places and I tell people like, oh, I went to college in Philly. Where in Philly? Oh, in the neighborhood. And they're like, that's offensive. I'm like, it's on Google Maps. Yeah, the street signs have rainbows on them.
Right.
It is not homophobic.
Right.
Yeah. What'd you say?
Yeah.
The gayber? Like, my kids are listening.
Yeah.
Don't say that.
Yeah.
It's like, shut up. Yeah.
It's so funny.
Yeah. But I love that too, because like, I'm really into horror and murder and all that stuff.
Oh,
so, like,
don't you have a podcast?
Yeah.
I tried to find that. I heard you mention it.
We've only filmed 4 episodes. We haven't released it yet. We wanted to do 4 before we release, so there's content, you know?
No, I follow that. That's exactly what I'm doing with this.
But I fucking, horror is like,
what's the name of it?
My life. We haven't decided yet, but I think it's You're Killing Me.
I'll keep an eye out for it. And let me know. I'll make sure I update.
Hell yeah. Yeah, it's me and my best friend, who's my co-writer. She writes my sitcom with me. She writes everything I do with me. She's the funniest person I know. And she's a comedian, but also a crazy horror fan. I feel like a lot of people usually like comedy or they like horror.
Yeah.
And I love, we love it. We got these matching tattoos for our.
Oh, sweet. Our favorite, that's awesome.
Our favorite movie of all time, Scream. Our 11-year anniversary was last year, so we got these done.
Your 11-year anniversary
of Best Friends, yeah.
You know the date?
Yeah.
How did that work? We're like, will you be my best friend?
And I popped the question. Yeah. So we met in school, and it was the first day of classes, so we could pinpoint it.
So it's not like you knew each other for a couple years. It's like, I'm ready to take this relationship to best friendship.
Yeah,
Are you down? I'm down.
She's like, this is so sad. Yeah. No, it's just like when we met, we were immediately best friends for life. I was dating her ex-boyfriend.
Oh, wow.
And
when you met?
Yeah, when we met, and it was, but we were young, we were like 14. And so it was like, boyfriends don't mean shit, right? You're your friends are everything when you're 14 or whatever. And then you grow up and it's the opposite. But it's like, it was like, oh my God, you're dating Thane. Like, I dated Thane last year. And we were like, cool. And we would like talk about it. If I was mad, we would like talk shit. And I'd be like, did he ever do this to you? And she'd be like, all the time. I'm so sorry. Yeah.
Oh man. And the problems that you complained about looking back.
My God. I'm like, I called his house phone and the line was busy. And then when I called, his brother said that he was on the phone, so I couldn't talk to Thane. And Thane should have stood up for me and told his brother to get off the phone.
How old are you?
I just turned 28 last month.
All right, so you might have had AIM, right?
Oh, fuck yeah.
Okay, yeah. I'm like,
you're talking to XX Talk Play.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah, and Savannah it still is in my phone. XO Sports, XO Sing.
Oh my God.
She's a singer. I've never seen her play a sport in my life, but yeah. What were you?
Just Lax in 91.
No.
And actually, this is actually really funny.
But you weren't born in 91.
That was my number. That was my number in sports.
Got it.
But before that, I was Domer 681 because I didn't know Dome was like, I saw it on the hat down the shore and had the Notre Dame sign. And I didn't know Dome was also like, not also like more predominantly a blowjob reference.
Yeah.
So I was like, in 5th grade, I'm like, I'm Domer 681. And then I remember specifically he told me, he's like, don't you know what that means? I was like, no, what? I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to get kicked out of school. And my mom, my mom's going to kick me off the internet. Right. So I changed it to just Lax.
Yeah.
Because I was a Lax player.
Yeah. Yeah. I loved AIM. Like, I kind of was on it. So I have one sibling and he's an older brother. And so I feel like if you're the younger one, you get to be part of the older kid stuff, so while like, I had friends my age who only had younger siblings. They weren't on the AIM train as much as I was. I'm like, Brad has an AIM. You better believe I'm getting an AIM.
Yeah.
So I can talk to him from the other room.
Right.
And
right. That's what I was gonna say. Like we had it in college and we'd talk like two
right.
desks down.
And we had one desktop. So I'd be like at my friend's house messaging Brad and be like, hey. And he's like, what the fuck do you need? I loved it. I think I joined AIM when I was in like maybe 6th grade or something. And it was, the away messages.
It's about when I started.
Yeah.
So that's what I was gonna say. The drama with like boyfriends and girlfriends that age and AIM. And and I saw he was online and I messaged him, but then he put his away message up.
Yeah, and the profile had to say like the initials of the person. Your
like
profile had to be like KC plus TM, and it was like, and then if you erase it, it's like, are you mad at me?
Yeah, right.
Or like your best friends had to be like named, and it was like MySpace too, the same thing because of the top friends.
Yeah, I never got on MySpace.
It was toxic. It wasn't. Yeah, it was so toxic to make. Thinking back, to make a bunch of 14-year-olds rate their friends in order of friendship for everyone to see. Like, no wonder we were fighting 100% of the time.
I was just thinking about that the other day. Like, the character arc of millennials and technology is like, we got into all that.
Yeah.
And then we're like also at the point where like, I feel like millennials more so than anyone understand the power of it. Where everyone older is like deathly. If I run into a lot with my dash cam driving Uber, everyone older is like, "Oh my God, are you recording me? Like you can't record me. That's illegal." Yeah. Like, actually, it's not. But relax. Like chill out. And then everyone younger is like, "Oh my God, you're recording? Can you put me on YouTube? Will you make me famous?" And then millennials are in between. Like, listen, I don't want to be famous. I understand why you're doing it. Mm-hmm. Like, it's security. I get it. Just like, don't be a jackass about it.
Yeah, that's true. Because our whole lives, we've been in a world at least where there's security cameras everywhere.
Right.
We've always to a level been on like CCTV. Whereas, totally. You look at people who are older and they're like, I didn't know I was going to be on camera. Like, legally, you have to tell me. And it's like, you're on camera all day.
Yes.
Do you have an iPhone? Because they're looking at you right now.
Right.
Your FBI agent
and I'm not being paranoid. I'm not like, that's what it is.
Yeah, the FBI agent assigned to you is watching you right now.
Yeah.
And if you're crying, he's going to see if you're okay.
Right. Yeah.
Like, that's how it works, baby. And and I've been running into this. This is mine, right? Mm-hmm. I've been running into this because I think I told you, like, I don't know how much I'm allowed to say about it, but I think I can say this, but I've been...
I can always cut it later.
I think I can say this, but because, they were going to come today, but they didn't. But I've been being filmed for a documentary. These guys who made this awesome, huge, very lucrative project that they sold to Amazon Prime a couple years ago, and they're working on something else right now, and they don't know what the story is yet. They just, like, follow me around, to make what a sizzle reel is.
Yeah.
Like a teaser to then that's how you sell it. And then the network gives you money to make the whole thing.
Gotcha.
So they're following me around for the whole summer into the fall. And it's so funny to see people's reactions. People stepping out of the way when I'm being, and it's like,
oh yeah,
like if anybody speaks or anything, they do have to sign a release form.
Uh-huh.
But like they were at Philly's Funniest. Like, did you notice them following me?
I didn't. No, there was a camera right in front of me. I didn't know if it was Philly's Funniest or that.
Yeah, so there's a guy who always just films, right?
Yeah.
But no, they were following me the whole time, and I didn't tell a lot of people. I just signed my contract like last week
with them.
So with them,
gotcha.
So I didn't tell a lot of people that it was up in the air, but because I didn't want to say it until it was official, right? Yeah. And so a lot of my friends were at Philly's Funniest and were kind of like, and these are doc crew people, so they're pretty good at like, like not hiding, but not making themselves obvious.
Yeah.
And after like a 30-minute conversation with a friend, they'd be like, I think someone's filming us. And I was like, I feel like such a narc because I'm like, I'm also mic'd right now.
Yeah, right.
Like, don't say anything incriminating, like.
Yeah.
Like, don't talk shit on the guy on the camera because he has earphones and he can hear everything we're saying, And like, I'll tell a joke and they'll be 60 feet away and I'll see him laugh, because he's listening.
Yeah.
And
that's funny.
And you see some people are really weird about it. I was teaching a comedy class up until last week. They just finished. There's all these beginners, and it was everywhere from a kid I graduated high school with, so a 27-year-old, to a 91-year-old. And
Oh, wow.
Huge.
That's
It was in the suburbs. It was in Ambler. So okay. It was a huge array of people all doing stand-up for the first time.
That's
which
awesome.
Just warms my fucking heart. Like, that's why when anyone's like, oh, I'm 35, I can't do comedy, it's too late. It's like, this dude, Herb did it at 91, buddy. Yeah. And
how'd Herb do?
He did as well as I expected Herb to do. He remembered everything. I was impressed by that. He has a very good memory, but he definitely did a lot of impressions of other races. And I kept saying, I'm like, hey, Herb, like, you can say a Japanese person said this to me and not do the impression. Oh my God. But he didn't take that note, and that's out of my
He didn't take that.
No. He said, I'm actually not accepting notes at this time, thank you. My set is perfect, and okay.
That's funny. Oh, man, I want to see her.
Oh, yeah. Well, the thing is, the doc crew came and filmed.
Oh, my God.
And most of them were super cool about being filmed. But when I got some of the, like, people who were in, like, their 50s, they were a little like, well, what are they going to do with it? And I was like, they're not going to fucking use it. You know, because you hear stories, like, on the news outlets that older people listen to, that's like, if you agree to this app and take a picture, they can use it for an erectile dysfunction ad on a billboard on 95. And it's like, sure, they can, but does anybody fucking care about you that much? Like, don't flatter yourself, you know? Yeah. Right. So it is interesting seeing people at Philly's Funniest sort of notice that I'm being filmed and then stepping out of the way because they don't want to be filmed, you know?
Yeah.
And
do you think it's because they don't want to be filmed, or I just think, you know, especially when it's a doc crew, you know, if somebody's holding up a phone or something, it's one thing.
Yeah.
But like a doc crew, you know, you just look like, oh my gosh, this person's, that's the communication major in me, where I'm like, there's something about a camera. Like if you look professional, people are like, oh my God, that must be a celebrity.
That's so true.
Let me get out of the way.
That's so true. I'm getting very used to this. Like, it's been a process of, and you know, when I met with these amazing guys, it was really like they had to kind of sit me down and just say, like, so, you know, we've worked with a lot of subjects, but I'm not used to unscripted. I do scripted. I'm an actor on camera. I'm not weird about being on camera at all. Very comfortable being mic'd on camera, but just taught like this, just being followed, doing everything, it's almost dangerous how quickly you forget they're following.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and they said, well, the goal is eventually you will forget we're there. And I'm like, okay, sure. Easy. Yeah. Okay, who the fuck is doing that? Holy shit, I forget so quick.
Oh, yeah.
And then I'll say something and I'm just like, oh, I fucking, like, it's dangerous. You know, like you watch, like, The Office and you're always like, realistically, if these characters are being filmed, they never would have done and said that. And now I'm like, I fucking get it, man. Like,
that's a good point.
These people are like having an affair on camera, and it's like,
right.
You know what? I can see totally fucking forgetting that you're being filmed. Yeah, but it is weird when I walk into places and it's clear I'm being filmed because it does make it seem like I'm something that I'm not. Right. You know,
right.
It's like, are you? Like,
are you a Kardashian?
Right. Yeah, I am. Thank you. I'm the sick Kardashian. Yeah. They keep me under the
Chris
rug.
Chris wouldn't let me in.
Yeah, right. They keep me under the rug. It was a bad look. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. Oh man, there's just so much. Like, there's a million things. Like, oh my God, I want to say this. I want to say that.
No,
like,
please. Dude, I'm in a rush.
But no, how are we good on time? It's
11. Yeah, it's 20.
I'm like ready to skip this cheesesteak. Like at the end of the day,
I don't need a cheesesteak, but if you need it for the footage,
the cheesesteak's like a MacGuffin almost. Okay. It's like people, and again, it kind of goes back to same thing what we're talking about. Like, people, I love real, and I love, like, I don't know, something happened at some point, and I was like, I just like wanted to figure out what the hell's going on in this world. Yeah. And it's a futile effort, and I'll never figure it out. But like, I just like want like real stuff in my entertainment where like a lot of people just want a distraction. And it was interesting. I was thinking about this a lot with you because I heard you talking about how late night, you were a huge Jimmy Fallon fan, and you said, it was like he was the only person to keep you company, and like the shows you watched when you were in the hospital by yourself was different than the other kids your age because they were like at school and doing stuff. And I'm like, I think part of the thing with this woke culture and like the distraction comedy that we have is like, you know, there are people that need distractions. And like I can't imagine like you know, the way you can't imagine, I'm stealing her joke here. Yeah, this is her joke. The way you can't imagine having to worry about a credit score, I can't imagine being in a children's hospital, you know? And like, and I, you know, see this comedy that I'm like, oh my God, it's just like distracting. I was like, all right, that's great. That, you know, that resonated with you. You know, I'm like, that's happy. But I think what really grinds my gears is like these people who have these nice lives, and I know everyone has their thing, but like they have so much like potential for like greatness and happiness, and they treat life as if they're stuck in the children's hospital ward and they need this distraction. And I'm just like, I think that's kind of like, wow, you people are gonna like, you know, waste your time, you know, talking about like, I don't know, it's just where people put their energy, you know?
Yeah, right. Like there's not a lot of substance in what you intake. And I think you're so right, because, you know, the number one thing they used to ask us in theater school, because we all had to take playwriting classes, and a lot of the times we would be pitching shows for the season, you know? So like if you like the universities, like the university's theater season. So, you know, from September to May, we're going to do 6 shows.
Students put them all on.
Yeah, well, so they had it professional directors, but seniors could do it as their senior project. And you'd pitch. And the number one question you always had to answer all the time was, why now? Why do we need this right now? You know? And I always thought that question was a little toxic, a little oversimplified, because sometimes not everything needs to be a huge political, socioeconomic, like for change kind of statement. Like there are things that genuinely you want to use as escapism, you know? Yeah. But then also the more I get into this field, and maybe it's also the changing of the times, because maybe I was in a world where everything everyone was doing was so heavy. It was like, we're doing these shows on homophobia. We're doing these shows on racism. We're doing these shows about sexual assault, where there's going to be like two actors literally playing out a sexual assault on stage. It's everyone leaves these shows enlightened but heartbroken. And I just remember thinking like, holy shit, I just want to laugh. And now that I've left that world, and also now we're in this world of TikTok, like you said, these 30-second videos, now I'm like, I think we could split the difference a little bit. You know, like we could have a little bit of substance and not just like look at my dog and I put it over a song I wrote about my dog. I fucking love dog videos, you know, like every night I sit in bed, I lay in bed and I'm high and I'm like, obviously I'm going to scroll through TikTok and look at dogs, and I'm going to scroll through Reddit and figure out these conspiracy, personally solve the JonBenet Ramsey case. It's going to be me. But also like there does need to be a certain amount of substance to stuff, or else our brains are, I mean, I guess 30 years from now we'll find out what the effect is on it, you know, like, so who knows, but there's got to be a certain level of depth. And I think you're right, maybe it's just the content I'm taking in, because like we're both on TikTok, we're both on YouTube, maybe there's more important stuff going out in like Oscar movies and, you know, feature like films and dramas. But yeah, I agree. I feel like if there is a certain level of like, why now? Why you're pitching this movie or this TV show to a network, and are they even asking that question anymore? Right. Or is it just like,
what's going to get the clicks?
It's crazy when you look on these casting sites, right? Like I've been on Backstage, you know, Actors Access, the Philly Theater.
I'm sorry. All right, go ahead.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
I heard Backpage. I'm
like, no, everybody
as somebody who's not in acting, I'm like, what the hell is Backstage?
Like, everybody fucking says that.
You really run the whole gamut with acting.
I am on Backstage and Backpage.
Right.
Because I have depth.
So what's Backstage?
Backstage is like a casting site. Yeah, gotcha. So like you go on, it's where they're going to post everything. Like they're looking for actors in, you say where you are. You're in Philly. They're looking for actors in Adam Sandler's new movie Hustle. You know, so you're on all these casting sites, and they used to just be like age, gender, sometimes height and weight, if it's hair color, if it's like you have to look very specific, be a description like, this guy is your usual class clown, you know, and that's all it is. And now it's great. Are
they asking for followers?
They're asking for your Instagram to be sent to them, and they'll say, some of them are even bold enough to be like, you know, we're not even gonna pretend if you don't have this many followers, you can't. And it's like, you don't care how good we are, you care that you're gonna get an automatic, you know, 60,000 followers, and I'm going to hire Eddie, and now I got 60,000 people guaranteed to watch this shit.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and it's like,
Man, that has to be so discouraging as somebody who went to theater school.
I had Instagram deleted for a while. I had it for like over a year. I just hated it, and it was just putting me in such a bad place. And then I was like, do I want to have good mental health or do I want to work? And unfortunately, I have to work, you know?
Yeah.
And
I know I've had that exact conversation myself.
Yeah, like and I think TikTok's a little better because it's not people you know. I mean, there are people you know on it, but most people you're interacting with are randos because you don't have to be friends with a person to see their stuff.
Right.
And I love that about TikTok. That's how you get a post on Instagram that's going to get 1,000 likes on TikTok is going to get 10,000.
Right.
And is YouTube like that? Like, I've never really been on YouTube.
Yeah, it's moving more like that. Everyone's pretty much copying TikTok. Instagram Reels is basically TikTok.
Amen, yeah. I'll use those too.
The only thing with YouTube that's different than all the other platforms that I struggle with is it's the only platform where you're choosing the video you watch. You know, other than shorts. I don't know. You have to click on it. But you have to click on it. So, like, title and thumbnail are really important for YouTube. And especially since most of my videos are in a car. Like, there's only so many different things we can do in here, you know? So, like, that's the only difference. But yeah, it's I've definitely had that conversation with myself. And it's something where I've, like, made a mental block where I'm like, occasionally friends will be like, oh, I saw this video, and I'll be like, oh my God, you watch my videos, you know? Because I'm like, I can't think about other people, especially people I know watching it.
Right.
Because I'm like, all right, well, you know I have an aunt who's in her 50s and is very Christian and conservative. And then I have a friend who's, you know, in his teens and he's gay and whatever, you know what I mean? Like, well, is he not going to like this joke? And is she not going to like this joke? And it's like, and I'm just like, all right, listen, I'm just not going to like worry about it, and I'm just gonna do something that I can stand behind, and you know,
and that's what I think you just hit the nail on the head. Like, that's how people get in this process of just making enough substance, like fucking fugazi nonsense, because they don't want to offend anybody.
Right.
They're like, oh, if I say something about how I had a dog who bit me once, fucking PETA's gonna be like, not all pit bull, you know, and it's like, oh my God, I can't say anything.
Oh my God.
So then if there's people who are so worried about that they completely say nothing of substance, it's like, you just talked for an hour and you said nothing.
Yeah.
And I think what you're doing is so much better because you're like, like, I have really religious family too, and it's like,
yeah.
And I'm like, bro, I can't. I have some my dad's side of the family I'm not super close with, but I have an aunt who, like, I have 4 cousins. They're all girls. They're all around my age, but they are what's called fundamentalist Christians. So it's not Catholic. You know what I'm talking about? It's
hardcore.
It's like bless your heart Christians, like the fucking like it like Southern. It's hard, and I've never let them. They ask to see my stand up all the time, and I'm like, I actually don't have any online. Like, you're not gonna fucking like it, man. You know, like, and I do this joke about my one cousin who has a daughter. She lives on like she's the oldest girl. She's probably 30. She's probably your age, and she has 7 kids, and she wants 10. And they live in Lansdale, like Harleysville area, on this huge like commune, and it's this huge plot of land that her husband's whole family owns different houses on.
Oh my gosh!
Insane. And they are Mennonite.
Sweet.
Right. And you know what Mennonite is?
It's like Amish.
It's like Diet Amish. Diet Amish. Amish light. And so they do use technology, but they still like visibly dress a certain way. And my cousin married into that family, so she's not exactly that, but she gets like that more and more every year. Yeah. And she has a daughter. She has one daughter, and the rest are boys. And the daughter's like, I don't know, maybe it was 4 at the time, and she posted this post on Facebook about. It's like, so a lot of people have been asking why my daughter and I, we don't wear pants anymore. We only wear long dresses and skirts. She was like, the reason is, like, because I read this article that was really enlightening, and now I'm going to share it with you guys. And I was like, I couldn't have clicked that shit fast enough. I was like, where the fuck is this going to go? Like, and if you had told me, like, I'll give you $100,000 if you can guess what the answer is going to be, never would I still couldn't have guessed it. It was that you could interpret the Bible to say that a woman wearing pants is cross-dressing, and
oh my God,
she didn't want to put her daughter in drag.
Oh wow!
I was like,
wow,
which is first of all insane, right?
Yeah.
But second of all, okay, so my cousin has never seen drag before.
Yeah,
The fuck do you think drag is? Don't flatter yourself. Like, you wouldn't last a day with the queen. She's like, I just don't want to be putting my daughter in drag. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah, but you wouldn't take her to drag brunch. Tell me how it goes, man. Yeah, and it was like, the other thing was that if you wear, and the other bullet point was, if you wear pants as a woman, you are tempting your neighbor's husband. You know what I mean? Like,
oh wow,
you are tempting because pants are tighter. And it's not a good thing to do as a Christian woman. It's not with Christ. So it's on you if your neighbor's husband thinks you're hot.
Well, what were you wearing?
What were you wearing? Right? Even if you're wearing like literally like the most baggy, it doesn't matter. And it was crazy. And I did a whole stand-up set about it, but my dad was coming and it's his family, but he's cool, whatever. And I was like, dude, you're not bringing anyone, right? And because sometimes I'll be like, I'll bring your aunt to the show. And I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do if you bring this girl. Like we're going to have to cut ties, you know? And it's like, you don't want to offend your family, but also like, if I'm going to offend anyone, I guess I'd rather it be people who kind of have to unconditionally love me.
Right.
So like randos, you know?
Man, that's really interesting.
Yeah. And is your family Catholic or?
Protestant. But I actually went to Christian school from 7th to 10th grade.
Where'd you go?
Delco Christian.
Hell yeah.
And you know Delco Christian?
No. Okay. So I know of it because my grandfather growing up, on my mom's side, he's super cool. May he rest. He's my mom's husband. I was so close with them. He was a pastor my whole life.
Okay.
But like, it was him and 2 other pastors, and they were both gay. Like, it was a really cool church. Even when I was a kid, like, fucking rocks. Like, I love that dude so much. And my mom went to Philmont Christian Academy in the Northeast.
Oh yeah, we played them.
Yeah. And so a bunch of my aunts and uncles went to different, like, they didn't all go to the same school. You know what I mean? And I don't know if that's one of them that they went to, but I remember hearing about, like, you know, that was like one of the other Christian schools.
It's I'm telling you, I was like, I want to have you back on.
Already.
Like, this is just like, there's so many things I want to talk about.
I know, right? I'm sorry if I'm like fucking going overboard.
No, this is great. I want to keep doing this. And I'm just like, there's just a billion things I want to talk to you about. But so when I was, my relationship with Christianity, I think is like, so when I was at Christian school, like I remember like the school motto was like they didn't have school dances because dancing makes babies. Like teachers would actually say that. And like on field trips, we weren't allowed, and it's since changed. And on field trips, like we weren't allowed to sit boy girl like in the same bus seat. Yeah, like it was just like
what are you gonna do in the bus seat?
Yeah, right. And so at the same time, in their defense, you know, I went to public school too, and like things happened on the bus. So it's like at the same time, you know?
Yeah.
But it's, you know, and as you get older and you see different things, like, and you realize that, like, yeah, it's definitely some of the approaches like pretty extreme. But at the same time, like, I kid you not, when I tell you the most like caring and like you know, like just the best people I've met are the people at that school, like the teachers and the administrators, and like man, there's one teacher in specific. I switched schools and I saw him like 4 or 5 years later, and he asked me about the school I went to. He remembered the position I played in football. He knew that I went to Temple. He knew that I was, and I was like, dude, like he must have heard that because he was following up with somebody else. And you know, like, not like someone I told him. I was like, man, this guy cares, you know, like,
that's amazing.
I never had a teacher like that in public school, like that, you know, like
did you do high school at Christian school?
Both.
Both. Okay,
2 years Christian, 2 years public. Because at the time, DC didn't have football and lacrosse, and I wanted to play. I mean, Just Lax in '91, I had to play lacrosse.
He had to,
you know?
your namesake.
And it's, you know, I know a lot of times, I think religion can get a really bad rap, but like some of the best people I know are people that identify as Christian or religious, you know, in different ways. But, you know, specific to that school, like I think it gets bad rap. But I did want to ask you, like, you know, like, what is your relationship or perspective, I guess, on religion? And like, you know, I know a lot of the rhetoric. It was like, you know, there's a lot of like, and we don't have to open this can.
No, please. But, I love this shit.
But like, I think about this all the time. It's like one of the biggest things I think about. I'm like, you know, and one of the biggest things with religion, I think, that bothers me, not so much Christian people, but religion is presented like, you know, God will save you and all the bad things that happen. Like, God's in control, this, that, and the other. And I'm always like, all right, well, if God's in control.
He fucking hates me.
Yeah, you know, like, if he does the good, why doesn't he do the bad? You know what I mean? Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. And, like, when you hear either family members or strangers talking about, like, this thing, given, you know, your perspective on life, don't you ever want to be like, oh, really?
Right.
You know?
Yeah, that everything happens for a reason. Yeah.
Right,
that's like that. I have always really struggled with that. And it's interesting because, like, my mom, like I said, she's such a badass. And my mom had my mom really young. My mom had me really young. So my mom kind of like raised me because I had a single mom. And so my mom is a writer, and she's been writing a book, and I've been like helping her edit it. And it's been really interesting to hear her you know, you think of it as your own story, and then you're like, wait, like I said about my mom, I get to hear my mom say, I'm reading about my mom finding out the day I was diagnosed, you know, and like the day that there were no cell phones, and she had to wait a full 24 hours to hear if we died or not on 9/11, you know, and it's like, you don't even think about that stuff. And she was talking about in one of her chapters, just like about how her faith, and even my pop-up's faith, was like wavering when all of this stuff was happening to me and my mom, you know, and it was like, I'm having a lot of trouble finding a way that there is like a God that does this, you know, and like
she's saying that.
My mom, I'm right, and she's so wonderful, and she's very spiritual, but she, you know, and she spent her whole, I think she got married to Pop-Up when she was like 19, and so she's been a pastor's wife her whole life, and you know, he passed away a couple years ago, and she's really finding herself, and she doesn't really go to church anymore, but she still prays. Like, I think it's organized religion for her that she's not into, but it's really interesting to hear, because it's like, I've always felt that way of like, there's no way everything happens for a reason. And if it does, what is, what is, you know, and it's like, did you ever watch the movie Holes?
Oh, yeah.
I love that movie. And I always
love Shia LaBeouf too. He's so underrated.
I know Henry Winkler in that movie, but I always make the joke, I'm like, if everything happened, like, my luck is, I'm like, I guess my great-great-grandmom just, like, forgot to carry Madame Zeroni up the hill. Like, because, like, it's, like, the whole thing of, like, the whole family has, like, Shia LaBeouf's whole family has bad luck because his great-great-great-grandfather was supposed to come carry this lady up a hill so she could drink water,
man.
and he didn't.
I'm sorry, I missed that reference.
No, and I
gotta watch it again.
No, and the lady's like, if you don't come back and carry me up this hill, your family will be cursed for always and eternity.
Oh, wow.
And so I'm always like, I get some shit like that happen because I'm like, you know, I've always like written it off to like luck. Like, I feel like I have really interesting luck. I don't think I have crazy bad luck. I don't think I have crazy good luck. A lot of things happen to me that are insane. Like, the phrase I think I use the most is like, what are the odds? You know, like what are the odds that I have this insanely rare disease that only 70,000 people in the world have? Like, what are the odds?
Is it that rare?
Yeah. What are the odds that on the September 11th, we should have already been in school, but we were late that day.
Wow.
And we're never late. And my mom was like, I'll just take you guys to school late. So while we should have been in school and hadn't seen it, we actually were standing next to the building when it happened. Like, what are the odds of all these things? And it's like, but then really amazing stuff happens. And I'm like, I just find myself, if I were to write a book, that's what I would call it, because it's like, I never really think about it from a religious perspective. Other people do. And people, you know, but it's funny how people love to say that phrase, everything happens for a reason, when a good thing happens. But I never hear that phrase when someone talks to me, you know? And it's almost like I would love to really ask someone who is like very devout, like who firmly believes that without waver, like, what would you say to me then? Like, what would your explanation be? And not even like I'm trying to trap you. Like, I'm really curious, you know, like, is there, I've never read the Bible cover to cover. Is there something that talks about that kind of stuff? You know, like people who've just really been dealt some bad cards. And it's like, hey, maybe it's because now I've made my living off of like joking about being terminally ill, joking about 9/11, you know, like I wouldn't have moved out of New York, and I wouldn't have met I wouldn't have met Savannah. I wouldn't have met the people I know. I might not have started theater, you know? And so it's like, sure, everything works out, but
I think to say that to someone in the moment of something bad happening is is super. I find it very insensitive, but I never get enough time with a person who would say that to like really ask. You know, I'm always like, I'd love to like get coffee and hear what your take is on that as a religious person, because like no one ever really has the balls to say that to me.
Right.
You know, everything happens for a reason.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't know what my family did in the past that like made, you know, this happen. But it's also, I don't know. I think religion is like you said, I know some of the most incredible people I've ever met through religion. I think it's hard because a lot of really awful people use religion unrelated to them being religious. They're awful, and then they're like, well, if I just say I'm religious, then, you know. Right. And that's where the wires get crossed. But I don't know. I've always grown up, like I said, in a very accepting church, and I've met the most incredible people I know through my church. I went to public school, so I didn't really have that side of it, but I love meeting people who are a great example of what a Christian or like a devout Jewish person or a Muslim should be, who are really following their faith and really want others to do well. That's fucking hard to find sometimes. Oh my God, it's hard. It's like, sometimes it feels like you're like digging for a needle in a haystack, you know?
Oh yeah.
Because the awful ones are louder.
Yeah. Yep.
Wow,
that really does sum up. And you say that a lot about a lot of different things.
Yeah.
I mean, just like content, like we're talking about, like the dumber things are the loudest,
right?
You know?
Or like the worst Republicans are the loudest, the worst liberals are the loudest. Like they're the worst example, but they're
the worst
screaming.
woke people. You were talking about woke,
right?
And that's really interesting, and that's so true. And you know, when I think about the people from the school, the teachers I mentioned, like they're not loud. You know, they're not loud in that regard of like. And I think that's what, you know, as you're talking, like it makes me think like the way it's like when people try to force it onto you, kind of preachy, right. And it's like they're the kind of people that I like to talk to, like okay, then explain that. Basically my question is I think it's in the same vein of like everything happens for a reason. Like if there is this, like if God's in control and like that's like all this kind of stuff, is like, why does so much bad shit happen, you know?
Yeah, right.
And like I was actually in a and again, like what are the odds kind of thinking. I was in a rut at a period in my life, and whenever I travel, it's a weird little thing, but I try to go to a church if I'm there on a Sunday morning.
Oh, word.
Just to kind of like, I think it gives you a really like interesting perspective of like the local, like I like to travel to see the local place. You know, I travel domestically.
Right.
I'm like, you know, I could go to Italy, but like, how is that going to really shape my perspective on my life at home? You know what I mean? But like, when I go to some backwoods town in, you know, North Dakota, I'm like, man, these people have the same president I do. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
And it's just like, it's always so, I think, perspective shaping for me. But I was in a church in Savannah, Georgia, sorry. And I forget what the preacher was saying. But
that sounds like it'd be a fun
it was all the first
deal to go to a Southern church.
Oh yeah, First African Baptist Church in Savannah, Georgia. It's right in like the center of everything. But he said, and I still remember it. But he was like, basically, and it was crazy because I was like in a spot in my life where I'm really thinking like, why does so much bad shit happen in the world?
Yeah.
And he said, he was talking about that, and he said, you go through. He was like, look, I don't know the answer, but I do know that you go through something to save someone. And like, that's what I always like go back on, where it's like, you know, everyone has their own little trauma or struggles or big traumas or struggles. And it's like, you know, it can help somebody else go through it. You know what I mean? So like, that's kind of what I fall back on, but I get pretty perturbed when I hear like, you know, God this and God that when they're forcing on you, because like that you say these things, but then when I bring up these examples, it doesn't make sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think there's holes in the story.
And then on top of that, I'm also like, if that's what you're using to get through your life, one, who am I to say that's wrong?
Right.
And two, it's like, I don't want to derail you. You know, like if that's what's keeping you together, I'm all for it. You know what I mean? If that's what's making you a good person, just don't be an asshole about it. That's when I want to be like, okay, you want to be an asshole? You're going to tell me how to think. Let me ask you a couple questions, because this isn't making sense.
Right. But then when you find people who were like, I went through something awful. I lost my child, I lost my husband, and then I found God. It's like, good, that's amazing. Or people who are going through sobriety, you know, when you go to AA, not that AA is innately religious, but it has
There's
lot
a big
of,
element to that, yeah.
And, you know, you meet a lot of people who were like, I needed something to hold on to if I was going to get through getting clean. And like, that is beautiful, right? Because in the same way that like, I had Jimmy Fallon, you know, comedy was my quote unquote religion. That's what kept me from just losing my mind. And still to this day, you know, I spend so much time in the hospital isolated, and like, that's what keeps me going. And if for someone else it's this book or these beliefs, like pop off, you know. Like,
and at the same time, it's like, if you lost your child, and that's like, honestly, one of my biggest fears in life, has been one of my biggest fears. I must have saw something when I was like, before I was even like childbearing age. I must have saw something, and like as a kid, I was like, I must have heard someone talking or something. I was like, man, that has to be one of the most terrifying things.
Jeez, yeah.
And so like, if somebody lost a child and found God, like you said, I get that. But at the same time, if somebody lost a child and like rejected God because of that,
they were, and then
I also get that. You know, it's like, I don't blame you, you know? And I think that's what kind of like, when you see these overly religious people in whatever religion it is, it's like, how do you reconcile those two things? You know what I mean? And because like, how can you argue against somebody who rejects God after a major trauma? You know what I mean?
What are you going to say?
Right,
yeah, that's so true. And like, and I think losing a child's like a great example, because like, my mom has had such a crazy life, because like, unrelated to me, you know, she had like a whole chapter in her book about me, but she has like, two of her kids have died. Like my aunt, well, she had one kid that died at birth, right? And then, or like maybe like 6 months after birth. And then it's always been my mom, my aunt, and then I have 2 uncles, and they're all pretty close in age. And my aunt is married, has 2 kids. They're very close to my age. We were always, my mom's only sister. We were always very close. And then like, over the course of maybe 10 years, my uncle killed himself. The 13-year-old son killed himself, and then my aunt killed herself a couple years ago.
My God. So
now the only one left is my other cousin, and he is like the fucking strongest, most insanely awesome person I know. He's maybe 2 years older than me, and you know, you think about it like, poor Sean, blah blah blah, but it's like, oh my God, my mama, you know, like, she has just been through so much loss, and now she goes around. She's not super religious herself anymore, but she literally gets paid to go around and talk to grief groups at churches all around the country, just to talk. And she, you know, a lot of them want her to bring religion into it, and she does to a certain extent, but also she gets that it'd be kind of insulting to go in and be like, so I know all of you have lost a husband or a child, but it happened for a reason. Like, they would be like, get off the stage, boo. Like, you can't, you know, you gotta read, like all comics, you gotta read the room, right? And, and so, like, that kind of shit, I'm like, you can find a way to make something about the universe without making it about, like, your specific God. Right. Because a lot of people have different gods, and there is absolutely no proof that any is more likely than the other. Right. We live in America, which is more Christian-centric, you know, but I mean, like, so do you watch horror at all? Are you into horror?
I watch a lot. I love movies, not specifically horror.
Like, what's your favorite, like, horror movie?
That put me on the spot.
There's no wrong answer. It's just like,
I do like Scream.
Fuck yeah.
But I don't know if that'd be my favorite. I would have to think for a second.
Do you like paranormal movies, like Paranormal Activity?
Oh, you know what my favorite would be? And probably part of it's the age I saw it at.
Yes, always.
You know what I'm talking about?
Always. Like, for me, one of my favorite movies that, well, you go ahead. But it's the same thing where it's not that scary, but when I saw it, it was so formative.
The Ring?
Oh my God. Okay, so I'm a little younger than you, and I saw it when it came out on VHS.
Oh my God. You must have been.
I was fucking, okay, yes. And so the one I was going to say is, like, this came out in 2008. Like, it's still very scary, but The Strangers, did you ever see that one?
I never saw that.
The guy, it's like the guy with the burlap sack mat. You probably recognize it.
I know the movie.
And, and so that scared the fuck out of me. But my point about horror was, like, I saw a lot of people die on 9/11, right? Saw a lot of people, like, literally jumping in front of me, and it was very traumatic. We were literally just caught in the middle of it. You couldn't go into any building, because any building you went into, people were like, we heard it might be bombed, you have to get out. So you're just stuck on the street while all this crazy shit is happening, all this debris falling cutting people. It was just awful. And so I was 7 when I saw that. Right?
How far from your school, or how far were you when it happened?
So I was standing next to the building when the plane hit it.
The World Trade Center.
Yeah. So
oh my God.
Again, what are the odds, right?
Oh my
and
gosh.
that's why it's hard to convince people it's fucking true. I'm like, my mom's here. Mom, can you confirm? Like in the audience, yeah.
Wow.
And so we just happened to have the worst. It was like Murphy's Law. Anything that awful that could happen would happen. And
as an Irishman, I know.
You get it, yeah. And so we were just, we were stuck in the worst. We just happened to be waiting to cross the street, standing on the corner, and the plane just flew right over us. Everything got very dark because the plane was so low. It was this huge shadow. And then it was just the loudest noise I've ever heard. But you can't see what it is. It seemed like construction or a bomb. No one knew. Yeah. And also, you wouldn't expect it to be a plane. Like, that kind of shit hadn't happened yet. If it happened today, you'd be like, fuck, a plane just crashed. Right. You'd be like, what the fuck was that? And then you thought it was an accident for a while, and the second one did it, and then
it's like, oh, it's not an accident.
Right.
Yeah, I remember.
And so I just remember, like, after 9/11, just really having a lot of trouble because I saw so many people die, and then I became, like, obsessed with death. Like, in the way that it was, like, I was into horror when I was, like, 7, 8. Like, I am, like, that kind of weirdo who will, like, watch... you'll see a video that's like, it's super graphic on Reddit, and it's like, this person's literally dying in the video, which is like awful, but my brain is like... I
know, I'm like that too.
But it's fucked up because it makes me weirdly feel comforted. And I got really into horror because like, my psychologist is always like, it's probably because it makes you feel better to see that other people are seeing people die. Like, you're watching it with friends, and you're like... you're seeing it too. Like, I've seen this in real life, but it makes me feel like weirdly, it's like a weird childhood memory to like watch on screen. And like, that was always like my way of like comforting my trauma. Like, I obviously never turned to religious. I was a child, but like, I would watch that shit and be like, this weirdly makes me feel happy. Like, I fall asleep to horror movies and shit, and it's wild. Like, I guarantee my parents were like, she's either going to grow up to be like the next school shooter, or she's going to grow up to be like, just like a girl who's a little like angsty, right? And I'm sure they're so grateful I turned out to just be like a comic who likes to watch people die. But I'm sure we would go to Blockbuster and my mom would be like, okay, you can get one horror, but then you have to get a comedy.
Yeah, right. I need to know
you're
you're
9,
a little normal.
Right? Yeah, don't you want to watch a princess movie?
Yeah.
And I'm like, no. But that always was comforting to me, like watching or like reading horror books and shit. So it's like, if you want to read something like the Bible that makes you feel, I mean, it feels weird to compare the Bible to like a Stephen King novel, but it's like, if you want to do these things that make you feel like there's some sense in the world, the fuck am I to tell you not to, right?
Yeah. When were you diagnosed?
7. It was a rough year. 2001 was a rough year.
That was the same. Yeah. I love that you laugh at that.
I forget sometimes.
Because I was wondering,
7.
like, the association with the death in the horror movies and having a terminal diagnosis.
Yeah.
I'm like, man, that day, and then 9/11 too. It's just all like.
Well, you know what's funny is like, so I was always sick, right? You're born with CF, so like I never lived a day healthy. When I was born, I didn't leave the hospital for a while, right? And so they always knew I was really sick. They just didn't know what. And CF is super rare, and like now if you're pregnant, you would know if your kid had CF in the womb. I didn't know until I was 7 because they didn't test you for it. And like technology wasn't nearly as good because it's genetic testing, right? And so you have to do this, you have to do genetic testing, and you have to do a thing called a sweat test where people with CF have like a salt deficiency. So I sweat out all the salt in my body. So I have to take salt tablets. If it's the summer and it's really hot, I start to feel like I'm drunk. I have to like shoot salt like a packet. It's disgusting, but it helps a lot. So they do a sweat test. They press this thing on you till you sweat, and they can see in your sweat how much sodium you have. And so this technology was not that good in 94 when I was born. And so it took until I was 7. And I didn't know. I don't know if my mom just didn't tell me or what, but I don't remember finding out I had CF, like, personally until I was, like, 10. Like, and, like, I'm sure she told me, and I was like, okay. Because I remember people, all the time, I'd be like, I'm sick, and then I just be like, you have pneumonia, you have bronchitis, and then she's like, you have cystic fibrosis, and I'm like, okay, so I'll have that for a couple months, right? Like, not even thinking. And, like, I remember my mom used to, like, put my pills in, like, my applesauce and shit. Like, I didn't really ever know what was going on. And I remember hitting like 10 and being like, Oh, because I got special things at school. Like I was allowed to miss school way more than everyone else, and I was always in the hospital. And I guess once you start to really get friends, you're like, oh, y'all aren't in the hospital all the time? What?
Not normal life?
Yeah. And so my mom found out, I'm sure she told me. I don't think that she hid it from me. That'd be fucking wild. But she, I didn't really know what it was.
Right.
And so, yeah, again, you're probably right. Like the morbidness of it all. Like I love watching like movies with, I don't know, like, you ever seen the Saw movies?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, love them.
I fucking love the Saw movies.
Yeah.
We just did a podcast episode about the Saw, the 2005 Saw. Incredible. Lee Winnell and James Wan are like, they make so much good stuff. They did The Conjuring, Insidious, they rock. And his whole MO, Jigsaw's whole MO, is that he's terminally ill. And so he thinks other people don't appreciate their lives. So he puts them in situations where it's like, do you appreciate your life enough to...
Right.
He's like, the one guy in the first one, it was like self-harming. He was cutting himself. And Jigsaw's like, that's not appreciating your life. So he's like, put him in a cage full of razor blades. He'd have to get out. And it's like, are you willing to like cut yourself to live? Like, it's very poetic. And it's like, a lot of people don't appreciate their lives until they're put in a situation like that. And I always thought that was so badass. Like, obviously I would never go to that extreme, but like, I loved watching the Saw movies because I was like, even if he was real, when you're a kid, you watch a movie and you think that thing is real, you're like, oh, that girl from The Ring is actually going to come out of my TV.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, Jigsaw's not going to come for me because I'm also terminal.
Like,
I do appreciate my life. Yeah. Like, he's going to come for like these other fuckers, right?
You're one of the few people watching that movie identifying with Jigsaw.
Yeah. I was like,
everyone else is with the guy in the cage. What would I do?
I'm
You're like,
watching it,
Jigsaw. I like that idea.
I'm watching it like, I see both sides.
I
like objectively, yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
I was like the third party voter. I get it. I get both,
There's like 7 of them or something, right? How many?
The 10th is coming out next year.
I feel like I fell off around like 4 or 5.
Yeah, 5. Like, So
you know what? I do remember seeing 5. I don't think I saw 6.
5 was fine, and 4 was like the one where they put the guy in the trap where he was like had a head box. It was underwater and they did a pen thing to breathe, which was pretty dope. But all of them, I mean, I could talk about Saw for 30 hours. I fucking love those. They're so bad. Like I
they're
the record show, they're not good. I love them though. And those are like, I mean, they kind of started like the torture porn world of horror. There's this awesome thing they do every year on AMC. It's called Eli Roth's History of Horror. Eli Roth's like a horror director, and they basically go through, it's really cool. They get all these directors, actors from horror, and they do episodic, like 6 episodes, and they'll talk about like the history of zombie movies, like the first zombie movie, how they progressed, history of found footage, history of slasher, and the one that they did about like, they called it body horror. So like, do you remember Hostel too?
Yeah.
Yeah, Hostel was like right the year after Saw, right?
Okay.
And it was so shocking because, well, Saw 1, the foot cutting off was so shocking to people. People were like running out of theaters. And now we're so accustomed to it. We're like, okay, show me something better, know? We're like, he just cut off his leg. Like, you can watch that on like cable TV now, you know?
That's the craziest thing. And again, it goes back to millennials like being part of the group that
right.
But
we're so desensitized.
Right.
Yeah.
I took a film class actually in 9th grade at the Christian school, and that was like a very influential class. In which one of the teachers, like one of the best people I've ever met in my entire life.
That's so cool. You go to film class, and
it was super cool. And we watched Alfred Hitchcock Birds.
Yeah.
And I remember
that
watching
one fucked me up.
Well, I'm in 9th grade and I'm like, this film thing. And I'm just like, I don't know. It's just kind of like compared to like other things I've seen. I'm like, what, the horror from back then to like, and I'm sure like if I watched it again now, I'd appreciate it a little more, especially having a little better. But you see the same thing with movies that you watch from like the 90s. It's like, man, that was like a crazy adventure scene.
Amen.
Because they had a car that like went over a hill and got a little air.
Fast and the Furious, they pushed the NOS and you're like, what?
Yeah, right. And now, Fast and the Furious, they're like flying out of planes and stuff.
Yeah, right. It's, I think my like hottest take on horror, like the hill I would die on that like I don't think a lot of people agree with, because a lot of people are these like horror purists in the community where they're like, if you don't think that Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho is the best movie ever made. And like, it's a hot take, but like, I think remakes are almost always better than the original for horror, because horror isn't getting different, it's just getting better. They're not, sure, sometimes like, you know, Ari Aster, who did Hereditary and Midsommar in the last couple years, he's really releasing these incredible new concept movies, but for the most part, you give me the 1978 Texas Chainsaw versus the remake with Jessica Biel in 2002. That's so much better. The acting's better. The cinematography, the gore. Like, I think people get in that like, oh, I'm a snobby. I'm sure you know. Right. I'm a fucking snobby. Like, it's not the original. But it's like, I think that's true with a lot of movies. Horror is a genre that I will always watch the newest version.
And that specifically, I saw Texas Chainsaw Massacre in theaters, so that gives it a little edge in theaters. But then I didn't even know there was an original, and I saw it on TV, probably on AMC, like probably during that time. And I remember watching this, and I was like, this movie sucks.
Yeah, it's not good. Because the gore isn't that good, and you know, like, there's some movies that I'm trying to think if there's a movie they've ever remade now 3 times. I mean, they do, you know what a requel is? They just started using this term.
No,
it's a term people use in horror now. So it's like, you know, did you see the 2018 Halloween?
I did. Yeah, I remember.
So that was like one of the first big requels where it's like, it's as if they made the first movie whenever they did, and it completely disregards any other sequel, and it acts like this would be the next sequel. It's like almost, it's not a remake, it's not a sequel.
Gotcha. It's like a part 2.
Exactly, but it's like in a world where you could just make the original, let that live, and then if they could just erase everyone's memories from Halloween 2 through 7,
right.
and they could just make this. And so it's called a requel. And so like the Scream that just came out was a requel, you know, because they didn't really reference, I mean, they did a little bit, but the other movies, it was supposed to, in theory, be like, what if we just picked up right from 1996 Scream into this 2022 Scream, you know? And so like requels are really cool because they're not remakes, but they have the same cast, you know? And like, I feel like that's where horror should be going, because but people get so pissed about it. People, you know, like film people, like, you get it.
Yeah, they can be a lot.
And Temple has a crazy good film program too.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Yeah, a lot of people I know who went to Temple went for communications, then film, radio, and television, because that was like their big program. At least like recently it has been. Yeah.
And I took some classes in both schools.
It's probably now film, podcasting, and television. Like, there's no way it's still radio.
That's part of my problem with studying communications. Like, looking back, I'm like, and again, when I went, and you know, just school in general, I'm sure our school's a little different, but like, you know, school in general is you're studying what happened. You know, they're not forward thinking, and it pisses me off. You know, like I said, I'm a little behind the times with like and so like it just drives me crazy how like when I was in school, they were saying like, oh, be mindful of what you put on Facebook, and you know, don't put any. And I'm like, you know, at the same time, there was I don't know, do you know a YouTuber named Mr. Beast? I don't know if people. See, it's just so crazy how the world works. Like this guy, he could be president in 20 years if he wanted to. He would have everyone 25 and 20 and younger voting for him. But people our age don't even know his name. But at the same time, I was in school where people were like, be mindful of what you put on the internet, and big corporations were like, you know, don't advertise online. This guy named Mr. Beast was 10 years old, and he was putting videos on YouTube because he was like, this could be the big, and he's like, you know, he's probably going to be a billionaire before he's 30. And I'm like, so my beef with like communication school is like, you know, you didn't need to teach me about cable television when we were on the cusp of like the biggest, you know, I could have been one of the first YouTubers ever, and you were telling me that Robert Tarleton invented Panther cable TV in Pittsburgh in 19 whatever.
And it's like, is it, because they probably are in the mindset of like, is this just going to be a fad? It's going to turn off. You know, and I was like, no, this shit is here to stay.
But there is a lot of, you know, good things that come out of it. That's kind of like my beef with communications, but the film school was more on the art side, and there's a lot of good things that came out of there. And I did learn a lot of good things at communication school. But I do have to ask, as a horror and enthusiast, which, I mean, anyone watching that likes it, I feel like you just gave the best plug for your podcast right there. There was a point where I'm like, man, she's talking a different language here. I'm like, Alfred Hitchcock did do The Purge, right? Like, I was like, if I got that wrong, I'm going to feel like such an idiot. Yeah. That was him, right?
It's my most...
Hitchcock's Purge?
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right, go.
Yeah, no, horror is my most, like, mansplaining, like...
Oh, forget, you're just an expert. Topic, like, that reminds me of another thing I want to talk. Yeah. I swear, I'm going to watch this back, write down 100 things I wanted to mention to you and go back. Yeah. But I wanted to ask your opinion on comedians, as a comedian and a horror enthusiast, the Key and Peele sketch of Saw 1, and then the scary movies, because I love both of them. Okay. Not a fan of scary movies?
No, I am. So I was really big into them when they were coming out, because I mean, what were they, like 99 into like
somewhere around there. Yeah.
And so the first scary movie was Scream based, right? And like, obviously that is my favorite movie of all time, and so I loved it because I knew every word to Scream, and so much of the dialogue was like almost a perfect ripoff, but like with a couple lines changed for like legal purposes, and I fucking loved it. And then the second one was The Ring. That's what the second scary movie was. The Ring. I mean, like, there are usually a bunch of them, right? But it was The Ring, and then the third one was Saw, and these were like three of my favorite movies, and so I fucking loved them. I definitely didn't get any further, like, once they started doing like, I don't know, like once they started getting into like Paranormal Movie and like the epic movie and the date movie, I didn't get into those, but I thought those looking back were the height of comedy. And now I'm like, oh my god, I'm like, those movies are so fucking stupid, but like I liked them they did their job at the time. They really did a good job of like knowing that was everyone's humor back then. You hear a lot of people say, like, you know, comedy has like its time and place, and then it comes sometimes like doesn't hold up, and I feel like that happens a lot, and stuff doesn't hold up because it's now something you just wouldn't get away with saying, you know, like,
and that's part of the thing.
Like now it's like, okay, you know, that doesn't hold up because it's just not something we joke about anymore. But also a lot of comedy doesn't hold up because comedy is different for each generation. Like, the things that so you were at Philly's Funniest. This is a great example. I don't know the name of the guy. Hopefully he won't watch this, but the guy, I doubt he will because he's older, but the guy who went last, the older white guy, and he,
I know
he did, my friends know this, is, it's like if I could write a thesis on boomer humor, you know what I mean?
Oh, that was definitely boomer.
And because there's one, boomers have one joke, and it's wife bad. I hate my wife. I hate being married. The old ball and chain, am I right, folks?
Yeah.
Because boomers got married in a time where it was like, if you wanted to live with your partner, you had to get married.
Yeah.
If you, like, you got married when you were 23 years old. So their whole joke is, I hate my wife.
Yeah. And that's also the comedy they grew up with.
Right.
Like Rodney Dangerfield. I get no respect.
My wife called me from a hotel room. She says, I have no respect for you.
Yeah.
And it's like, we get it. You hate your wife, right? Yeah. Like, but our generation, like millennials, we get married later. We get married because we want to get married. I have so many guy friends who are like, she's my best friend, you know, but like, that's not the humor back then.
Right.
It's the fucking King of Queens, like 2.5 Men bullshit. I mean, I know those are newer shows, but like with that mentality, My Wife and Kids, it's like, oh, this lady's gonna turn my hair gray. She just wants the credit card to shop and sit at home and do her nails. And it's like, those jokes were funny at the time. I have no doubt. They kill when you watch old videos of old comics doing it. They're not even funny because they're not even not funny because I'm offended by it. It's just not applicable anymore.
Yeah.
It's like we actually don't feel that way anymore. And when you do comedy, you should be doing jokes that everyone's like, I know that feeling.
Right.
But now, unless your audience is in that same age range, which a lot of comics now are, you know, people in their 20s and 30s, we don't have that experience.
Right.
So we don't get as much or relate to wife bad. I hate my wife, you know? Don't you hate when you're eating airline food and your wife is a bitch? And it's like, really well said.
And that's exactly what I like, why I appreciated your set so much, because on the complete opposite spectrum, it's almost like they were afraid to relate to the things that are real to them.
Yeah.
Because they were told by the culture that if you admit that, you'll get canceled.
Yeah,
you know
right. We all are thinking it, and if you say it, if you're the one to say it, even though everyone's thinking it, you're done. You know, and it's like a competition of who can hold out the longest without agreeing. You know?
Yeah. No, for real. And that's why, like, when you said, the people who, you're talking about, like, you're unsure of what to share, the people who know you well forget about, the
they don't give a
mainly
fuck.
right.
I
call them breathers. I don't know
it's called a cannula.
Cannula. I'm gonna stick with breathers.
I like
cool.
breathers.
Yeah.
I'll say that to honor Mama.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And then the people who don't, and when you came on stage, I was like, all right, there's probably going to be some reference. She's going to explain this, right? But you didn't address that at all.
I know. I like to make y'all sweat.
No, for real. As an audience, I love that. And that's, again, like, I didn't just want to talk to you because of, I think your comedy. Did you win, by the way? Did you win?
I did. Mm-hmm.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
You were my number one.
Oh, hell yeah.
So how's that work with?
So I'm going again August 10th.
Okay.
Please come.
Okay.
I'll give you one of my comps.
Nice,
and
nice.
That's second round. Audience vote again. And then if you make it through again, it's judges.
Gotcha.
And they keep. Cool. So last year I made it to the judges.
Gotcha.
But not the finals.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, and just so you know, I was one of the last people in.
Yeah.
I wasn't late.
That's good. They won't let you vote if you're late.
Yeah, exactly. But they didn't have I was actually sitting with another comedian who he was there. It was kind of funny.
Yeah.
But he didn't get there on time he was one of the ones that was late. But he was like, they said I'm late, but the show didn't even start and I'm right here.
Yeah.
He's like, you see me sitting here, right? I was like, I'm sorry, man, it wasn't me.
Yeah, right.
But they didn't have a voting thing in our thing. So I had to hunt down a thing, and the waitress had it. She was like, I was told not to give it to you. I was like, it wasn't me that was late. I was here the whole time. So I worked to make the vote. My vote counted.
Hell yeah.
Sometimes you feel like your vote doesn't count. Right. In America, my vote counted that night.
Not at Helium.
But where was I going with that? So, so you come on stage with your breathers. And I was like, and you don't address it at all. And like you said, like that was the first thing I noticed, right? And I was like, wait a second, are we just going to normalize this? Like, are we not going to, this goddamn normalize everything? I was like, what the hell? Like, we got to talk about it, right? And then you went into your set about it. I was like, all right, now we're talking about it. Now here comes some jokes that like, I'm sure I can like, but man, you went in. I was like, you went to a point where initially I was like, holy shit, she's not joking.
Yeah.
But she might not make it. And that's why I just absolutely loved it. If we miss a cheesesteak, with terminally chill Kirsten Cills, sorry. That was an actual accident. That wasn't on purpose.
What did I say?
Kristen just comes, so
I know.
that's part of her set.
Christine,
You have to check out her set if you ever have a chance.
Come to Helium.
See it on Terminally Chill. But
hell yeah,
that's why I'm fine with skipping it, just because like I'm so happy.
I'm sorry, I won't be able to have them.
Any social you need to follow, I'll put it in the top comment. And give your little spiel, whatever you want to plug.
Oh damn! I hadn't thought about plugs.
Or just any parting words.
Yeah,
we can just cut it.
I'm bummed I didn't get the cheesesteak, but we were gonna go to Phillips. Yeah. Phillips fucks. I used to go there all the time.
Oh, okay.
It's 24 hours.
Yeah, we're right.
Which is not easy to find an actual good cheesesteak. That's also 24 hours. I will say if you go at like 2 a.m., like you're not getting like the A crew.
Yeah.
They're not gonna be as good. But. Yeah, I'm trying to like plug a cheesesteak that I love. Like, I'm a
I'm talking about you.
I know.
But
like,
I want you to plug you.
I'm trying. Okay, yeah.
You don't have to.
I'm Kirsten Cills. Thank you for watching. Please, if you have cystic fibrosis, which like is crazy, so few people have it. If you do, comment so I can see it because like I want to talk. And follow my Instagram and listen to the Hollow Cord podcast.
Yeah. Hollow Cord podcast, bring number one.
Thanks for tuning in. Oh my god,
that's great.
I can't wait to show this to Vinny when it's done.
Oh, that's so good. So the podcast with Kirsten Cills, aka Terminally Chill, went so long I was not able to get a cheesesteak with her. Phillips, South Philly. I believe it's like 26th and Passyunk I'm at. Here's what I've realized about myself. I cannot be some sort of food critic. I don't have that in me. I don't care that much about food. I love food, but I'm not that judgy about it. And at the end of the day, we're eating cheesesteaks. I know for me, cheesesteaks were literally what I choose to have for like a birthday dinner. Like when I'm deciding to do something fancy, I go with cheesesteaks. But I know for most people, that ain't it. I kind of wish I put ketchup on it because it's looking a little dry. But we'll see. Maybe it won't be dry when I bite into it. But here's the rating system. I finally figured it out. Episode 5, I believe this is. I finally figured out how I'm going to do the rating system. Is this something you would go out of the way for? If you're out of town and you're in Philadelphia, and would I say, yeah, I'd go out of the way to try that. And so far, the initial impression of Phillips, I was too nervous to take a video of it, just because it was not nervous. It just would have been awkward, you know, because at the end of the day, I like to consider myself a local guy. I know Delco, South Philly, but, you know, I don't want to come into South Philly looking like I'm from Delco and do the touristy videotape the thing. But they probably had about 5 celebrity pictures here. It's real, like, local, like, homely looking spot. And one of the 5 celebrity pictures was Amber Rose. So immediately I'm like, I just love this place. All right, here we go. Phillips, cheesesteak. Let's see how it goes. Oh, that's good shit. I imagine if this was after an Eagles game, 11 at night after a long day of drinking, you're walking home because you don't want to pay $60 for a 15-minute Uber, and you stop and get Phillips, that'd be good. What do I rate it? I think I'm going to give this a 7.6 out of 10. Would I go out of the way for it? 1,000%. It is such a, this is a very South Philly, like, this is a 10 out of 10 experience. Has the Philly cheesesteak seal of approval. Cheesesteaks with Kirsten Cills. I was so excited during that podcast. There was multiple times where, like, we're talking about pretty serious stuff at times. Like, she has a terminal illness. That's why her sitcom's called Terminally Chill. And I know, like, after the fact, I realized, man, she's talking about some pretty serious things. And I'm sitting there with a smile on my face just because I was so excited to be having a conversation. And she's very funny. And I'm like, man, I'm going to turn into a meme.